Untitled?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. How are
Good.
you?
I'm great. I'm fine.
How many Klingon generals have you murdered today?
Well, after the last lot I did, I thought I'd cut it down for today and just stick to the 5. Anyway, welcome to Star Trek, our ongoing review of Star Trek episodes and continuing with Season 2 of Strange New Worlds. I am joined by an amazing cavalcade of people, including Dam to my right, Frank in the corner there, Shy underneath me, and Stars is back once again. We are going to talk about the very serious and the very divisive episode Under the Cloak of War, which sees Dr. Mbenga come to face his past in a walking ambassador who visits the Starship Enterprise, preaching peace and loyalty and his reparations for all the wrongs that he has done. Gentlemen, how did we find this episode? I'm gonna go round and just get general thoughts. To start, Dam, you're here with us this week for the first time on a Trek. How did you find this episode?
Yes, I love this episode. Like I said, the eyes. You could mute this and you could just look at their eyes. The sheer level of acting in this episode, and not just from Babs. I mean, he's clearly the star of the show here. But it's the others. You watch them all around him, and he's just owning it. And then, but you look at Chapel, you look at Pike at the dinner scene, and it's and he's doing the leadership thing. He's sitting back and he's watching the guys in the room. It's always, I always think never watch the person making the speech. Always watch the people watching them. This is what I love doing this, and it's interesting seeing people's reactions. And you see a lot of shows where people they're like, okay, I'm off camera, or I'm not the focus here. They all went the full, the extra mile for every scene there, and they always do. But I just think it really stands out in this one, and the tone is, coming off those old scientists. It's just slaps you in the face, and that's how good this is. It's like, look, we can't, we're not doing grim, we're not doing whatever, and then it's like, oh, this is so grim, this is so bloody, and there's no redemption. This is, there's no redemption for this. There's no, because he is so far into this that you can have the ambiguity about whether he did it, whether he intentionally did it, what happened at the end, but it doesn't matter. Because you think about it, you put yourself in his head, it doesn't matter. He is still always going to be haunted by this. And that's what he portrays at the end. I thought it was just, again, I want to see him in, I want to see him something, I'd love to see him in anyone ever read Piranesi?
No.
He could do that. It's a one-man movie. That would be it's a one-man book. He could carry that.
Well, he's in Dune, so we'll see if he gets more to do in the second.
Yeah,
nice.
He was briefly in, wasn't he?
Yeah, well,
scene.
the character doesn't. Yeah, his character doesn't get a lot. Maybe they've written more for him, but he's,
well, if they've seen this episode, they should.
Yes,
definitely. Frank, your opinions?
I think we're all gonna pretty much say the same thing. All of us, as very young children, no matter our collective ages, grew up with fathers and their fathers who knew what war was, who knew what the trauma of war was.
Nope.
And in generations that did. If anybody French is here, obviously no, because they just, French. But I'm playing the part of Erica Ortega. So
I was gonna say.
But war was never pictured so. The trauma of it, the after effects, the PTSD, none of that was ever really portrayed in old cinema and old shows like it is now, with everything that's gone on in the world, obviously, in the last 20, 30 years. This was done so brilliantly. I have personal friends who have been to war and have these types of behaviors and moods and just demeanors, and it's real. And it was amazing, the eyes, every bit of it. was so amazing how he did so much with so little. And the beautiful part of Mbenga, if you know, obviously you put Babs's unique voice and kind of accent down for a second, he is always quiet. He always talks in every sense, every scene he's ever in, and every episode. He's quiet. He talks with a purpose, a direct diction that anyone, man, woman, child, grown adult, can understand and is comfortable with. You hear him yell this time, and his yelling scared me. I was like, fuck, that man's gonna kill me. It was cool. I tried to find fault with this episode. All the episodes this season so far have been great for different reasons. This one just is so brilliant for so many different reasons. So many cool background people going back and telling the story of the Klingon War that I wish they'd flesh out more and give us a whole series. Just thrilled. Absolutely thrilled with this episode.
Shy.
Yeah, I also love this episode. The for one, the world building and fleshing out the realities of what it takes to maintain a federation, right? Like it's not just all replicators and holodecks. It's hard decisions and hard conflict, and the tree of futuristic socialist utopia must continually be watered with the blood of patriots and Klingon war criminals. So this demonstrates that very admirably. But even more than that, I love the dichotomy between the privilege of an idealistic viewpoint about war and conflict and the reality of having been in it. You have Pike, who the Federation literally left in deep space because he embodied the Federation ideals, talking to Mbenga, who was boots on the ground in the mud and the blood of the Klingon War. And, Pike's very aware of his privilege, and you could see him walking on eggshells talking to Mbenga about the reality of it and what happened. And Mbenga's like, I love you. I know you're I know you're right technically, but fuck off.
Respectfully, fuck off.
Yeah, respectfully, fuck off. And it was just a really nuanced and complex episode, and I love that they left some ambiguity with the shadow play at the end of what exactly happened. Did Mbenga stab that knife into Ra? Did Ra pick up the knife and try to stab Mbenga and he killed him in self-defense? Did Ra commit suicide by Black Ops ghost operative?
No. He committed suicide by walking to the same room as Mbenga. That's suicide.
Well, touching him and refusing to leave was actually
he was a dead man.
Our favorite move of the episode. Please.
Yeah, for your own sake. That's a kind of choose to live moment, isn't it? It's the co-op.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Please, my friends, choose to live. Just some great stuff, and a little. Once again, Ortega's is a space bigot, and
Stars.
Great episode.
So I find this a really interesting exercise in so there's a long conversation going on now about massive media franchises and when they start to overstay their welcome, and so how many movies in should you look at rebooting it? And then you get to an episode like this which draws so heavily on a previous series and on previous episodes that you go straight into essentially Discovery Season 1 and you're like, okay, yeah, I've watched Discovery Season 1. I know all the context from this. Now I can be presented with the specifics. I can be told the story and I don't have to ask any questions. I can just go right into that headspace. It tonally matches. And it does just, it fills in the world, but it also just draws on what was previously established in such a way that you can get to the heart of what actually matters. You don't have to spend time explaining what the fight is about. You can just go straight into, these are the characters, this is how they are being affected, this is their trauma, this is how they choose to respond to that trauma. This is how they are being limited in how they can choose to respond to that trauma and how they deal with it after that trauma has passed. And it really did just feel like all the best anti-war episodes from DS9. Like, it felt like Duet, it felt like In the Pale Moonlight, it felt like all of those episodes where it's just there's no good person in the room at the moment. There's only those who have blood on their hands and who don't. And it's really interesting when you sort of like, even the question who picked up the knife kind of is it's an interesting value judgment in my mind. Because it's like, okay, so say Mbenga killed him. And, okay, so is that somehow worse or better than all the Klingons that he killed during the war? Like, just because this is one that we spent 45 minutes talking with and seeing him be not violent? Was that somehow worse than the 3 that he killed in Jagal? Is that somehow better than, like... At that point, it's like, he's got blood on his hands. How much more does this matter? Because to Mbenga, it doesn't matter. It's a case of, I killed him, but it doesn't make me feel better. It doesn't make me feel necessarily worse. It's just more blood on my hands. I've already been broken. I've already been sullied. I don't feel like I can wash the hand. I can't wash my hands of this. It's part of me now. So even asking the question, like, did he kill him? It literally doesn't matter in that point. It's like for neither of the people in the room, it doesn't matter. Like, because Ra, it's, guess what? You were living a lie, and now someone else knows. And this carefully constructed melodrama you've been playing out for the last few years that's given your life purpose and allowed you to exist in the Klingon cultural paradigm. Someone else knows it's complete bullshit. And they know it in the most intimate way possible. They saw you run away from a fight 4v1 as a Klingon. Guess what? That's it. Like, I almost feel like that option alone makes suicide almost a viable option, because for him, if he has any Klingon warrior pride left, it would almost have to demand that, wouldn't it? And that's what makes it so interesting.
Talk about the fact that Ra was just a terrible Klingon, because no Klingon worth his salt, if he had any honor, would have ran away from a fight and let his officers be killed. I mean, we spoke in the watch-along about Duras, but at least Duras fought a battle to the death, as he did. He didn't run away, but...
Romulan collaborator. I cannot believe you're excusing...
I'm not saying he's terrible.
No, we're just saying there's a hierarchy here. Yeah, I think Ra might be the single most... Because, Duras never actually ran from a fight he was in. Yeah, sure, he'd play around on the sides or whatever, but Ra, he ran away from a fight. You don't see Klingons do that, and that's really interesting. It's so fascinating to me that this entire episode and half the character dynamics in it between Chapel and Spock and between Pike and Mbenga only exist because we had to explain why certain characters were in Discovery Season 2 and why certain ones weren't. I love that. That's one of those wonderful limitations of the craft creating the story. I love stuff like that. Just so much craft into this. And it's such a pared down episode. Like, there's not a lot going on. It's not an elaborate musical. No. It's not a crossover episode with another show. It's not flashbacks. It's not elaborate things with nebula aliens. It's literally just a load of people in a room talking, and it's somehow the most gripping thing in the entire world. And guess what? That's often where Star Trek is absolutely at its best, when there are a load of people talking at a table and you're like, I can't look away because this is so fascinating.
I mean, can we consider the fact that now we have the AR wall and they can just make that stage anything they want? Like, can we consider this a bottle episode because it is all filmed in stage?
Wow.
And this essentially is a kind of bottle episode with a few extra...
They're all going to be, though. They're all, if we do that, they're all going to be bottle episodes.
Yeah. The AR wall's just too versatile to not be.
It's good. No, I said in the watch along, like that AR wall's going to get down.
The AR wall they did for Toronto was killer. Like, they made
Stop.
that thing looked alive.
I don't know. It fell apart a bit in the Mustang. The AR wall couldn't handle the Mustang.
New York.
New York, yeah.
So
your thoughts, Idol?
Sorry, no, I really enjoyed it. I think I have an issue with sort of the timing. I feel like this would have been a great episode for season 1, or maybe like the tail end of season 1 to go into season 2 and then have Mbenga and Chapel drop the drugs and go apeshit, because then you'd have been like, oh, okay, this makes more sense because he hands her the Protocol 12 and they get a little bit of explanation, like we have the super soldier drug that actually is really crap, but like, and then if then it comes to, because I was very negative on episode 1 because I was just like, where has this come from? Where has all this war angst come from? Where are all these like combat skills that they've suddenly got? Like Babs is now like his amazing commando, and it's all explained in this episode, which is great. I like the moment for that, but I feel like if it was the other way around, if they were ordered a little bit differently, that would have been a little bit better for myself. But that being said, this was like the In the Pale Moonlight Chitrell. This was the moment of this episode where we have the moment where Benga's at the end doing the Cisco holding the whiskey up and it's like, would I do it again? Absolutely. You know, like I have no regrets.
I can live with it.
Exactly. And he could. This was his mission. This was his. You know, and here's the real question. Here's the one that has been dividing the community a little bit. Is, do you think Mbenga was justified and should have done it?
This question coming soon.
It was
Pros and
self-defense.
cons.
That's a good one. Yeah,
That's
a good one. You know what? How I mean to answer your question with a question.
Talking about middle managers.
Yeah, I know, right?
Political.
Allow me to answer my question with a question. How about you fuck off? Anyway, so here's the question, right? And this is like kind of broadly related, but it's kind of related to the themes of the episode. Is peace built on a lie worthwhile? Or is it doomed? Because this almost goes into like Watchmen levels of like, you know, if you think about it, Ra and all the peace that he's brokered is Ozymandias building a world peace for the world, you know, based on a lie of a giant space squid or Dr. Manhattan. And it's like, I guess what? That's all comic book bullshit, right? But it does kind of broker an interesting question about politics and about what we tell ourselves matters and how much truth matters. Is peace worth a lie? And is, you know, if it's built on a lie, how fragile is it? And if it breaks, was it, you know, fated to happen, or should we have fought to protect the lie? That's an interesting question.
Is putting a flag on the moon worth, you know, rehabilitating a lot of people who built rockets that killed a lot of children? Who knows?
And this episode
attempts to answer that exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is about the Project Paperclip, they called it here in the States, where they had all these Nazi scientists over here building rockets for the U.S.
Yeah,
the moon landing didn't happen, folks.
Yeah, okay.
This is not true.
It was an AR wall.
Yeah.
1960.
Kubrick's AR wall.
All CGI.
If you look really closely, you can see the coffee cup on the moon's surface.
Yeah, the Starbucks.
So
yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of whether or not Mbenga was justified, like that, I think that ultimately boils down to whether or not you think murder is ever justified. And it also depends on your reading of whether that was self-defense or not.
Let's take this less geopolitical and more personal and more Starfleet. He is a serving Starfleet officer who has a diplomat come on board, and he has a duty, the first duty he has, and especially as a doctor, you know, do no harm, the first duty to your patient. Do you think he has his vengeance? It was personal. It was very personal. Do you still think, with those in consideration, rather than, you know, the art of the impossible, do you think he was justified in killing Ra? Do you think it was the right thing for him to do?
Well, that's the thing. It depends entirely on your reading of Mbenga's character and how far gone he is in terms of his trauma, whether or not he killed him or whether he died in self-defense.
Well,
because that's a completely... Guess what? Legally speaking... on an interpersonal basis, that is completely different. Yeah. If you can make a case that your life was in danger...
And also, it's what he says at the end. It doesn't matter to him. He doesn't feel any better or worse. He's still broken.
Yeah.
It actually doesn't matter to him if he intended to, or, well, he didn't intend to. He did try. He kept saying, don't touch me, walk away.
Please.
You know, so yeah. And then he eventually pushed him too far to either draw the knife, or he went for the knife, or again he honorably killed himself. But after his previous actions, I'm doubtful.
That's why I love that. Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
No, you.
I was just saying that's why I love that final shot of Mbenga and Pike on the two biobeds, because Pike is on biobed 1, perfectly works all the time. You know, it's clean, it's pristine. And Mbenga's on biobed 2. It works for a little bit, and then but it's gonna break, and it has to be fixed again. It works for a bit, and then it's just always a little broken, right?
But
Something
Mbenga
can be
doesn't
only
know.
managed, yeah.
Mbenga doesn't know that Pike has his own vision of the future as well. So Pike is broken too, and knows that as well. So neither of them, it's a perfect, example of you can have a friendly conversation with someone or an unfriendly conversation, but you don't know what's inside their head.
Yeah. Well, it's also a case of Pike has the benefit of knowing that vision, that future is horrific, but he knows he gets crippled a hero. He does an intensely heroic thing, and that's saving children, literally saving children. And then Benga has to deal with the knowledge of all the people that he killed.
Yeah, so avenge
whether or not he
children.
was justified, to avenge children, but does that make him feel any better? That's still a ton of blood on his hands. That's still Klingon hair that was coming away with the knife when he was yanking it out of their skulls. That doesn't make you feel better about the fact that, I'm doing it for the children. Was I doing it for the children? Was I doing it because I was just so fucking angry? That's kind of the question, isn't it?
Well, was he also doing it for the lie? Because Ra's lie was that I am the Butcher of Jakral and I'm here to serve my penance, when what he actually wasn't. I found that really interesting. It's almost like Luke, I am your father moment, where Benga's there kind of going, no, I am the Butcher of Jakral. I was the one that was meant to kill you, and I assassinated all your men while you ran away. And you could just see Ra just kind of going, but he kind of still tried to go through with his dishonorable bullshit and just tried to go, well, we could have peace, brother. I'm like, you're the worst diplomat.
CEO. He is a CEO. He is every CEO I've ever worked with.
He's believing his own bullshit, yeah.
Read the room.
I would answer your original question, Idle, with a question of my own. What would the Klingon Empire think? You see, 30 years in the future, when a Klingon is on a Federation ship and murdered in cold blood by Federation people, might I add, they haul the Federation to their own court system, and they condemn them to the mines of Rura Pente. What do you think the Klingons would say here when they get the call and say, oh, well, he's dead?
I think they probably at this point have already discounted Ra, because no doubt they'd have heard of what he's doing. So he would have been dishonorable. I reckon he'd probably, if he went back to the Empire, he would be dead. He would be a dead person. That's without even, Ra is self-serving for anything. He's like, I'm in the Federation. I want to survive. I'm just going to be goodwill ambassador now and just fuck all my cultural values.
If Mbenga was in the wrong, the Federation could have taken him and held him at trial and said, bad on you. But really, if you want to talk justice, the justice belongs to the Klingons. He murdered a Klingon. Yeah. And the Klingons would pat him on the back and say, awesome. Hey, you want some blood wine? Thanks.
You do it solid.
And Spock's like, hello.
He lied. He lied about some guys. He lied about some guys he killed and then he ran away. And you killed him. Nice one.
Yeah.
Do
you want a medal?
Here's an honorary battle.
Yeah, for real. There's just so much going on in this episode. It's almost part character study, part war drama. I also really, guess what? Any war drama worth its salt knows how to make you start dreading certain words. And as the episode goes on and on, every time you hear incoming transport, you just start to feel that pit in your stomach. You're like,
some
what's
gruesome stuff, wasn't there?
Yeah, that was a little bit mash, I guess. A little bit in terms of just
Chopper's incoming.
Yeah.
It was a very Kurosawa episode. You mentioned Stars about how everyone's the best drama of it. It's just the people talking, but it's also like Kurosawa's Rashomon, right? You have this event that
versions of the truth
is different from three different perspectives, right? You have Ra's perspective, you have Mbenga's perspective, and then you have Chapel's perspective, literally her perspective from outside this screen where she's witnessing it and she's relating that to the captain at the end during her testimony. And Kurosawa was always great about just having scenes where people are just near each other and being the most dramatic and tense, and this draws up from.
So
man, there is so much to
this
unpack in this.
This is a deep one. Let's lighten up a bit. We did have a scene with what I think is the first replicator, with Spock going more into his indulgences in Klingon society. He's definitely very interested in sampling some more blood wine. But we see the first replicate. We have that kind of scene at the start there, as well as a very awkward Ortegas dropping herself in it on the bridge as well.
Ooh, that was a rough one. That was rough.
Bad. And Una very quickly just going. Go on.
How long do we think Ortegas is in the doghouse for her 2 transgressions during
Yeah.
like bad mouthing him as he comes along a bridge and then like standing up and walking out of a diplomatic dinner?
I don't know, man. I feel like it's kind of a double standard if you're like, Mbenga, I'll let you get away with him appearing dead in your medical bay, but Ortegas, you badmouthed him twice, so you're in trouble. Like, fuck off.
she's either they're lining her up for either a redemption arc or a flip.
Well,
Or she goes, yeah.
as we
she
saw
goes
in
rogue.
Quality of Mercy, she's very much on the
Yeah, but that different
bigotry
timeline.
side. True,
Different timeline.
Yeah, there's a lot that was different about that.
I'm telling
I am
you,
gonna-
I'm just thinking the promo photo of this for season 2. They're all sitting like at a Last Supper tableau at the table, and she's in the Judas seat. She's in the Judas seat. I'm telling you.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking she's not something will come up there.
I know there's a lot of Ortega
I don't
fans
know.
out there, so this is like
So here's the
Yeah.
thing.
She's too popular. She's too
I know.
popular. They don't do that to her.
Well, here's the thing. We also know from Boimler, you're a war hero. Guess what? That instantly seals the fact that whatever she does is not going to stain her reputation enough that Boimler, mega hero, wouldn't like look at her in another way. That being said, I can absolutely see her having an episode with either a Klingon or some other race that she might have
like the enemy
some quote unquote
from TNG.
like the enemy
That'd be
with
quite
Geordie
cool.
and Bokra the Centurion. I could absolutely see something like that where it's like, no, I have to unlearn my prejudice. Because here's the thing.
Yeah.
This was a really interesting perspective from Mbenga and Chapel, but Ortegas is kind of drawn out of it. She's like allowed to be the voice and the instigator, but we don't know what it was like for her because she was a pilot. We don't know how much of the trauma she got to witness. Like, was she on a ship that got destroyed and she had to evacuate? Was she like doing groundwork? Was she also like in a downed shuttle? Like, we don't know kind of how deeply she was in there. And I'd be really curious to dig into that and see what the root of that bigotry is, because it does. There's all these little hints. It's like there's all this like sort of subtle othering going on with her, and I'd be really curious to see where they're going with that, because it feels too recurrent to be Yeah, I know it's not you. I hate Kling. That's why I became because of you. Yeah, I'd be very curious to see. Yeah.
Boimler thinks she's a war hero, but as this episode showed us, we don't know what really happens.
That's true.
Boimler's reading the history books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the thing, and that's what that episode showed us. He's all about the history books. He's got a poster, but he doesn't know what the person's like.
True, but we also have to confront the fact that if we're going with famous Star Trek bigots, like Worf literally let a Klingon, a Romulan die on the medical table because he didn't want to give him blood. Now, granted, the Romulan was just as bigoted right back, but this is not the first time a Star Trek character has been allowed to be violently bigotry.
Yeah, but Worf would occasionally go in for a little bit of like terrorism as well. So
look, you can have a little terrorism as a treat.
It's like Shaxx and the warp. Shaxx and ejecting the warp core. I was like, yes,
Please let me eject the warp core.
How about Pike's situation? Because Pike very kindly asked Chapel and Mbenga to sit in, knowing their history with the war and with Ortegas as well. Do you think it was right for him to push the situation, or should he have gone like, maybe you guys, if you want to sit out of it, please do, But he definitely sort of insisted a little more. And during the dinner, he was kind of muted and not kind of. I didn't think he wasn't aware of what's going on, but it didn't feel like he wanted to address the situation.
I think that's a bit of an unfair judgment on Pike. I think it was more of a case of he trusts Chaplin and Mbenga and Ortegas to try and be mature adults about it and just contain themselves and not flip. And to their credit, Chaplin and Mbenga did not. They held up under remarkable pressure.
Yeah.
And Ortegas is the one who flipped. So I'm very curious why she was
did in Ortegas.
Yeah, she did not. She let the blood rush to her head and she made the decision she felt was right. And here's the thing: is we're judging her for that, but Mbenga killed the guy. It's like the interesting.
Did he?
The interesting. Well, he died in his medical bay. That's suspect enough. Yeah, several
Lots of
times.
people
Yeah,
died in that medical bay. Lots of people died in that medical bay.
I think the best that Klingon has is a malpractice lawsuit. That's as close as you're going to get.
Pike, it's what they said in the last scene. Pike has the privilege to believe everyone is as morally black and white as Pike is. Pike is doing his job. And that's it. And he believes in the ideals and the whole thing because he's been protected. He's not the guy they threw to the wolves. Like,
although ironically,
Alvarado.
Yeah. Ironically, when Pike loses his memory and his memory of his own nobility, as we saw a few episodes ago, he suddenly becomes like just as vicious, if not more, than Mbenga, right? Yeah. So, who is he to judge Mbenga's actions?
His nobility is a learned behavior, and Mbenga's learned behavior is what he's done. So.
All right.
This is really interesting.
It is.
This one, I think this might actually go up there as one of the most nuanced character studies in all of Star Trek.
Absolutely. It's definitely one of the most morally grey episodes, because although you can look at something like In the Pale Moonlight, in the end, it was needs of the many over the needs of the one, and ultimately it was more Garak than Sisko that made the choice in there, and we know what Garak's like,
There was a degree of separation that allowed Sisko to feel that he wasn't an actual monster. He allowed bad things to happen, but here, it's like, no, this is a Starfleet officer that did this, and he's not going to shy away from that. Like, that's what makes it so... They swung for the fences this season, and we've said that about all the comedy episodes and about the musical, but this is just as hard a swing for the fences. Like, I feel like the darkest that season 1 got was all the Gorn stuff, and I don't feel like any of that was nearly as dark as this. Like, maybe, there was a bit more gore, but in terms of just, we're going to show you people doing morally ambiguous things, and you have to make your own judgments. Like...
We're going to show you.
We're going to trust you, the audience.
We're going to show you your hero character doing more ambiguous things.
Yeah, and then you have to watch that character every week, knowing what they've done, and you have to make your own peace with that, which is really interesting. In terms of like
how is this?
What Frank was talking about.
And like, how are these guys going to evolve? Like, you can see Chapel sabotaging her relationships because of this. You can see. So how is Mbenga going to proceed? Is he going to spiral like the biobed? He's going to be okay for a while. Red lights.
People are always like, why isn't Mbenga chief medical officer on Kirk's Enterprise then? And this pretty clearly illustrates why he's not. Like, he needs to just like less stress.
He's such a man.
He's got that Worf black mark on his record. Like, he didn't. Maybe he didn't kill the guy. Maybe because Iron Ray asked, "Did he really kill him? Is there a word of God on this?" A word of God would kill this episode. You cannot have a definitive answer as to what actually happened in that day. But the fact that it happened enough is more justification in my mind for why McCoy replaced him easily.
I like how in the TOS movies they have hard light recordings of everything happening in every corner of the ship that they could just replay back and forth. Like, oh look, Spock mind melted him right there on the floor in engineering. But here we have there's a screen so they can't see anything. Look,
it was a privacy law that was introduced in 2217 with the new refits.
Yes, they had to kick all the cameramen off the ship as well.
in medbay HIPAA regulations, you can't have cameras. People are indecent.
That I would actually agree with that.
I live in Europe. I live in Europe. We've got GDPR.
Do we ever get footage from inside a medbay in any episode? I don't know if we actually do. You could actually be onto something there. Yeah. Certainly get stuff from on the bridge.
How many episodes do we get footage from inside the ship in general?
Well,
they don't open that can of worms because otherwise it would solve too many problems.
Star Trek, and then Star Trek if they had security cameras.
Yeah.
Irony Rip says, so my brother is a lawyer, and the moment that the Klingon ambassador put his hand on Mbenga, especially since he had obviously known at the point that he didn't like him, at that moment it became assault, legally speaking. Even if Mbenga was proven to have killed him, that'd be really hard to get him on murder. Maybe not on murder, self-defense, manslaughter. I'm not sure what the distinction is there, but like I said, a word of God would kill this episode. This episode thrives on the ambiguity. But I want to talk about Chapel for a while because,
that was my next thing.
She has some awful stuff going on for her. Like, just you're the head nurse now. What? Thanks. What? Thanks. Yeah. Like, what a fucking situation to get thrown into.
I mean, that's from Voyager, really, isn't it? It's like, where's the chief medical officer? You are the chief medical officer. Oh, right.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. They could have done that darker with like that here. Where's the head nurse here? Here.
A little bit here, a little bit of that splotch as well. Yeah.
Oh, quick shout out for Clint Howard.
Jesus.
Clint Howard in the
Yes, love Clint Howard.
you know,
He was
another
great.
appearance, another classic. Well, one of the
Or in
you know.
Generations, when Chekhov goes to the two reporters, you've
You just
nurses.
become nurses. Go. Yeah.
Yes, that was cool. Top 10.
I also,
moment.
yeah, it actually is. What I really appreciate about this, especially because we've been learning more and more about Chapel's interests, is like just like Mbenga, like these are people who have like high interests, who are like, I want to study Vulcan medicine, I want to do archaeological medicine, I want to contribute to the scientific and cultural mores of my society, and then they just get thrown onto the altar of 100 million Federation corpses or whatever the casualty figure was, and it's like. The corruption of Starfleet and what it's kind of meant to be versus what it has to be is also kind of never been better illustrated here. Like, oh, maybe some of the siege of AR 558 or something like that kind of went into it as well. But I feel like seeing Chapel, who we know, like she literally went to interdimensional space and found out about how to gene splice people, and you threw her into a war, and it's like it just feels like such a waste. Like I feel like that illustrates that point the war drama always gets about, just the sheer loss of human life and what that means for future generations, really kind of illustrated really nicely.
I feel like this is the first episode. Sorry, I feel like this is the first episode we've had that deals with like a proper Starfleet consequence of war. Because although we had the Dominion War, we never it finished DS9. Didn't DS9 finish on the Dominion War? We never had an aftermath for it. We never had people coping with the results of the Dominion War. So this feels like a kind of answer to that, almost dealing with like, okay, this is the answer to the Klingon War. You know, how has this affected people several years down the line?
Well, we do in Picard season 3 a little bit.
Oh yeah,
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd agree. Legacy of Paranoia, which I thought was probably the most interesting part of that season.
This episode was 5 minutes longer. That's my one adjustment. Like, give Christine a little bit more trauma time in war. I mean, this is Mbenga's episode, definitely. Like, so it's not really necessary. But that's my only real.
And after spending all that time lusting after Spock and finally getting him, she's a bit like, yeah, I want a break. Like it's but then it's always been established that Chapel's like, well, I've flitted around relationships. Like this is kind of her MO, and I imagine she'll. When she eventually meets Corby, there'll be the same kind of thing there. So it's
well,
poor Spock.
I've read a lot of like kind of like things about this, and people are coming down hard on Chapel, especially for things that happen in the next episode. So I'm not going to say any more about that for Walt. But I feel like Chapel has been dealt the most like unfair hand of anyone, like even more than Pike in a way. Because Pike at least gets to know, I get crippled, but I'm a hero. I'm remembered for the entire Federation as like my birthday is a fucking national holiday. Okay, my legacy is secure. People are gonna love me. My crew is like solid and secure in my position with them. Got a great relationship with Batel, although we have our ups and downs, right? And then Chapel is like, I want to be this. I want to study archaeological medicine. I want to contribute to the world. I want to be Starfleet's best and brightest. And then you get a succession of Vulcan bigotry and of like pining after someone you can't have. Relationships have all gone bad. And then you literally get a little purple-headed swat from the future telling you, I don't recognize you right from the gate. I recognize everyone else here, but your contribution to history is such that I only kind of recognize you. Why is Spock acting like this? Oh, your relationship isn't enough that you fought so hard for. That you really put a lot of stock into, and you're not sure already where you want it to go. Oh, that's not enough to matter, and it kind of has to disintegrate in order for history to take the right course. And then on top of that, here's all your trauma dredged up in the course of like,
a week later.
Yeah, a week later, and then Spock is trying. He is trying so hard, but he literally does not get it. Like, even if he did get the relationship, which he doesn't get war. Because he's not been in the Klingon War. And it's like, he's trying, but he can't bridge that gap. It's literally like, where people came back from World War II and they try and talk to their spouses about it. It's like, you weren't there. I can't really explain to you what that sensation was like. And I know you're trying. You can read about the news reports. You can read the statistics, but that's not the same as being there. And that creates that distance. And these are all just piling excuses for her to distance herself and do what she always seems to do, which is just destroy any relationship that she has any long-term. Like, she was going to hook up with that guy in Red in Spock and Mock last season. And the instant he spoke about making anything kind of long-term or kind of setting up roots, out of there. all she needed was an excuse, and Boimler and this all gave her just such a perfect storm of excuses that you're like, yeah, that distance makes sense, and it sucks for Spock, but Chapel is having such a rough time. And then, irony points out, and then she's going to end up with a man who's murdered and replaced by a fucking robot. What a poor... I feel so
spoilers!
bad.
Too soon.
60-year-old spoilers!
Yes.
This
Shai's watching it in
forever
chronological order.
This forever shakes her confidence because once the greatest movie of all time, the motion picture, rolls around, she's the doctor. She is the head medical officer of the
CMO.
Enterprise till fucking disco hippie McCoy shows up. He's like, hey, I'm the doctor now, and you, lady, you need to get back in the kitchen, and you're a nurse again, and you work for me. And she's like, okay, sure.
She's just happy to be back in white.
Yeah.
Like, what? That's not the
Yeah,
Chapel
so-
we know from War.
All this stuff happening to Chapel turns her into a very quiet person in TOS. Yes, that's called trauma. You withdraw into yourself,
Yes.
and you start. It's starting to make more and more sense to me. Like, we know they're going to break up at some point, and if they come back together on the Enterprise at some point, then it's like, well, yeah, I could see it being a case of, I was with Spock. It was fun for a while. It made me feel good. I liked chasing after men. Like, it seems to be, she likes chasing after a relationship almost more than being in it. Like, she's a really interesting character. So many dimensions to a two-dimensional Major Barrett character.
Yeah, or she comes back years later and he's like, I'm having nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And that's why you've got like 3 years of pining.
Yeah.
And bringing him plomic soup.
It's like me and my books. I like collecting books. I have lots of books. I arrange them neatly on the shelf. I never fucking read them. I go to Waterstones and I'm like, I love this book. This is a good book. I like the
Well,
look
yeah,
of this.
we know Spock gets back together with T'Pring at some point in the next
Well,
7. So.
Yeah, that's a bit of a question mark after.
Yeah, because
Charades, isn't it?
That's what the mock time's about, yeah.
Mock time they have to get back together. Although we know that the relationship has not. They're very frosty to each other in the episode, so they're gonna reconcile in some way, but it's not gonna be the same.
I appreciate that they're not, because I hate love triangles, like in shows where they try and force it, and I appreciate here that they've just basically cut it off they've like cut it off at both ends quite quickly. Like they're not dragging this out and making a focal point without a point, and not just to kind of go like, will they, won't they? It's just a case of like, they did, then they didn't. See you later.
And you know what? I also have to give them props for this is a love triangle in which no one is the bad guy. Everyone is just fucked up and dealing with their own problems, and you're like, no, I can kind of see it from everyone's perspective.
Yep.
Like, yeah, you can ascribe blame for Spock for immediately going for Chapel the instant they're on a break. You could go at Chapel for pining after a man who's in a relationship. You could go at T'Pring for not, doing enough to bridge the gap between human and Vulcan. Even though she is trying, but like, no one's at fault here. It's just relationships are messy and no one ever wins. Well, unless you get really lucky.
Okay, let's go on to best and worst moments. I think we should start with our wonderful esteemed guest, Mr. Dam. What is your favourite moment? Start with your worst moment. What's your worst moment? What's your best moment?
I don't really have a worst moment. I think the Mokbara. It's like,
The slap fight.
It's. I think that could have been a little bit more.
Was it full contact Mockborough?
Full contact. Yeah,
contact,
it was full contact. Pat a cake. It was like.
I feel like they were somewhat limited by the fact that, like, the other actor clearly doesn't have Babs's level of proficiency in martial arts. Because I also noticed a lot of quick cuts in that scene, and that always breaks up the flow of a fight. Because like they have to. I imagine that guy's probably older and not nearly as physically active. So
Is it because Chiwetel and Julia 4 is not available? It's too big a star.
Absolutely. Imagine him in that scene.
Those two would be
Imagine him in that scene.
Like,
that would be.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. He's my other. He did the audiobook of Piranesi, and it's amazing.
Wow.
So, but imagine that fight. That would have been great. So that's my low point for that scene. It's the pancake. And then
69. Yeah, that would.
Yeah.
Probably the dinner scene. Probably the dinner scene for me, because it was kinetic as well as it was kinetic communication. It was not just here's what we're doing, here's what we're saying. It's I'm looking at this, you're looking over there. Again, I'm the guy who watches the people who I watch the watches, and that's what They were all doing. They were really acting well in the background. It was like everyone was going, "I'm a character actor." Every single person there, whether and right up to Anson Mount, he was. I'm way back here, and I'm a character actor, and he did everything perfectly. I thought that was my win.
Frank, let's go to you.
Well, I'm gonna save, because I know my other two esteemed colleagues, as well as yourself, less esteemed idol, will want to pick something with Babs and just his performance altogether. So I'm going to go completely off that path. Give that to you. The best for me was getting to see backstory of characters that will continue on in the franchise for the rest of the franchise, so we get to see little bits and pieces. This is the beginning, and with earlier episodes in the season, this is the beginning of Spock working with Klingons and getting to get intimate with Klingons to try and form a bond and a relationship that carries us into the end of the TOS franchise with Star Trek VI. And I love that, even inadvertently, with him trying to, for the first time on screen, make a replicated drink and getting it wrong and just immediately owning it after going through all this shit with the Pring and her crappy mom. And it's like, this is my fault. This is entirely on me. I am so sorry. Like, he's like genuine, because he's like trying to get rid of his emotion. All this. Love little things like that. Love getting to see Chapel have her moments, because we know eventually, spoilers, Roger Corby, spoilers, gets in a monster maroon and is at Starfleet headquarters as a commander. She leaves medical, I guess, and goes.
I think she's still in medical, but
yeah, she had the medical color. So it's cool getting to see characters that we know far into the future have these moments that kind of define who they are going forward. If I had to pick a downside, and this whole season's just been nitpicks, because there's not been a whole lot that's been glaringly bad. I'm going to say we didn't get enough of Pike, and he could have had a little, as Shai said, make the episode 5 more minutes long. Also give Pike just a little bit more one-on-one time with the ambassador, even, just to get a little bit more of that grand diplomat of the Federation and all those ideals out, so that when he has to sell that to his own crew and say, hey, good to see you, by the way, you know that fucker you really hate? You're going to be eating next to him. Like, have it where, and I talked to him and it's fine, and he loves your mother, by the way, and it's all good. Like, something could have dealt with just
what about
a
my
little
mother?
bit more.
Okay, Shai.
There's not really
There's
not much to pick apart. I'll sort of fall off of Dam's thing. You know, you have a 2-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Pro-Am champion in Babs, and not just here, but also the entire season. Even though they've been giving him a lot more action, which is great, the choreography hasn't been top notch. I had the same problem in Discovery, the pilot of Discovery, when you had Michelle Yeoh, like legendary action star, and her fight with the Klingons in the first.
It got better as time went on when she became.
Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna. That's what I was gonna say. Like, as Discovery went on, the fight choreography is fantastic, but this season with Mbenga reminds me of that. It's like a little
Tilted.
Like the way you would shoot around people who don't know how to fight, but you have a guy who does know how to fight. So, like, let's see a little bit more of it. And here, as Dan was mentioning, he's saddled with maybe a performer who can't keep up with him. So you can only do so much. But then my favorite part is, of course, I think it's the biobed scene at the end with him and Pike just talking, just the way they are in a square frame. We're not trying to do any weird angles, just straight on. Pike's on the biobed. His the screen on that's red. The screen on Mbenga's is blue. It's very much about the privilege of idealism versus the hard decisions of the real world, and that just summed up the episode very nice. Yeah.
Stars.
So I actually have a pretty easy worst one, and it was something that I noticed while I was watching the episode for the first time. The scene between the ensign and Mbenga when he's patched him up and they're talking about, I felt that some of that dialogue was a little bit cliche. I felt like it was a little bit too much Discovery, we are Starfleet, and a little bit of the rhetoric. I felt like it was a little bit almost like they were talking at each other rather than to each other, which didn't feel like it kind of fit the scene. And it took me out of it a little bit, but then I was immediately drawn back in. So it's one of those like minor little nitpicks. Like it was just a case of like the dialogue didn't quite jive. Like I feel like could have used another few drafts. But in terms of best, like God, there's so much to pick from. But Idol, I'm gonna have to do you dirty, and I'm gonna have to say that the best moment of the entire episode is just.
Oh, I wasn't gonna pick that
like
one, but that's fine.
No, okay, good, yeah, good, because like that is so good. Like that is what acting is about. It's choosing a single physical action to show I am on my last nerve. I am literally praying and begging for your life to you. Your life is in your hands, not on mine anymore. I have tried my best. Like literally, it's like all of these things are being said in a single single thing. It's like I am trying here. And the fact of what happens next just becomes incredibly just like there was no other way it could have gone. There was literally no other way that was going to go, and he communicated perfectly in a way that's like I don't blame Mbenga at all. I feel like that guy, I would have done the same thing if that man was in my freaking med bay trying to flog his fucking used car salesman bullshit on me. I'd probably fucking stab him in the throat. Don't worry, I didn't stab him.
And your best moment wasn't Babs getting out of the shower?
Hey man. Ain't that kind of episode. When we get to season 3 and we have the Magic Mike episode,
okay.
then
Oh my god. Nifty says, a Babs versus Klingon Michael J. White would be great. That would be quite good, actually. I actually have 2 worst moments, and again, they are nitpicks. Okay. I'm surprised no one picked them, actually. Mine are more comedic nitpicks, to be anything. First one is, what's with that ugly starship at the beginning? The USS Marie Curie, with the one nacelle.
Cool.
That's it.
I like it.
I wasn't as keen.
Let me take a look at this now.
A little bit Prometheus, a little bit Voyager.
Yeah, I got a lot of Prometheus off that, actually. I really liked it. It felt like a really unique design.
I like how it sounds like everyone's like, oh yeah.
Fuck you, Idol. Fuck you.
Okay, alright.
Fuck you, I say.
My second nitpick is all this wonderful food that Pike makes, and it has to sit on the side going cold before anyone can eat. Look, there was a jambalaya just wasted there. He was sitting in front of a plate of canapes.
Okay.
I can imagine Ortega's is sitting there going, can we just eat now, please?
There's nothing more annoying than cooking a large meal for a lot of people, and then they're talking, and I'm like, it's getting.
And you know it's tasty. You know it's good.
It's getting cold. Yeah. It may kill you, but it'll be good.
And yeah, the ongoing tradition of Starfleet captains going to their doctors for the good shit,
Yeah.
I love that conversation with Delta Parsley. That was great.
Yeah, I'm after
you can imagine McCoy arriving. imagine McCoy arriving going, okay, take this whole unit out and put a drinks cabinet in there.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with this ship, Idol. You're crazy.
Yeah.
She's a pretty lady and you're just a hater.
I'm a traditionalist. 2 nacelles and a dish, and I'm all over it.
No.
Right. My best moment is genuinely sincere. Is that moment just before Mbenga goes off to commit the destiny he always knew he was going to do, and he has that chat with Chapel just before he goes, and he hands her the Protocol 12 drug and all that. But you just look at his, and like you say, you look at his eyes, and Babs is such a good actor. He looks like he is disconnected. He looks, intentionally, he looks like he is committing his mind to do something he does not want to do. He is like focusing on the middle distance. He's got the cold, dead eyes of a killer at this point, and he is committed. And I just love that energy. And Chapel's just like trying to cope. She supports him, which is that's.
But it scares her a little bit.
It does,
can tell.
yeah, and it is a scary moment. Like you would not want that.
Yeah.
Like Mbenga has plenty of really nice warm moments, and then like there are times when he's just like, "Oh, do not grab that man on the shoulder. You will die."
Yeah, don't. Yeah,
You have
yeah. No, in fact,
already
it ties into what Dan was talking about, like with the eye acting during the dinner scene. Like, if you look at Mbenga, he looks like he's disassociating for half of it. He looks like he's just not there.
I also
he's trying his best not to be.
That's in a different way.
No, he's gripping, he's white knuckling the arm of his chair, and Pike even notices it.
Yeah. Leans over and then just goes and gets a drink, and I was like,
It's what Frank was saying. I mean, I do know someone who was like military police, and he taught us at one point how he's like, if you really want to scare someone, you don't look in their eyes, look in their eyes, but look at the back of their skull. Don't look. Don't recognize them, and just look straight through their eyes. That was the look.
Ooh.
Wow, that's terrifying. Yeah, you're right.
It was terrifying teaching a 14-year-old that because it was very scary.
Oh, I
very scary, very scary, man.
Also makes you wonder, like, does someone need to go and have a sit down with Babs, like, at some point and just say, "Are you okay? Can we just check everything?"
Yeah, but then he just give you that big, like, the fucking $1 million Sidney Poitier smile, and you're like, "Oh God, you're fucking so beautiful."
But I mean, he's been an athlete. He's been, he as Shai said, he's a champion. He's a winner of this. I mean, imagine you're coming out and this guy faces you, and he's got that big old smile, and then suddenly it's like, boom, I can do this. I am going right through you, and nothing you can do to stop me. Nothing in this world can stop me. And you're going, okay, I'm out.
I'm such a formidable fighter. I turn Klingons into Federation diplomats. Like, that's happening. That's the Mbenga effect. All right, let's start wrapping this up. Stars, please. What is our criteria for this episode?
Gentlemen, how many Clint Howard Starship Troopers pastiches out of 10 would you like to give this episode?
Clint Howard Starship pastiche. Yeah, I love it. Okay, let's start with you. Let's go reverse order. Stars. Yeah.
There's so little to criticize with this episode. Like, I feel like the little bit of quibbles with the dialogue, the tiny little bits of the Mokbara, like, I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10, but I feel like in my heart of hearts, if I wanted to show someone just like how deep and introspective and mature Star Trek can be, I would show this episode. Like, this is not quite supplanted in the Pale Moonlight, but I feel like it absolutely deserves to be in the same conversation, and that is rapturous praise. Like, I have tiny quibbles. It's like, no, 9.75. I'm gonna be that bitch. I'm gonna be that bitch. It's just so good.
I'm gonna put a decimal place limit on you here because I feel like that's gonna fuck my algorithm up. Can we say 9 point? Are you gonna round it up to 9.8 or are you gonna 9.7?
Okay, you're 9.8 then. Fine. Yeah, I'm happy to round up.
I'm gonna limit your decimal places here because it's getting too extreme.
Okay, fine. Yeah, because like I feel so bad saying anything bad about this episode. Like, I feel like just the cinematography, the blocking, the framing, just the incredible character acting, the nuance, the moral ambiguity, the fact that it only exists because of a contrivance so that the Enterprise isn't around. Like, there's so many wonderful things about this episode that only exist because of a confluence of events, and I just fucking love it. It's such an interesting view at a character that has, it just has so much depth that you would not have anticipated from just 2 episodes on like TOS. So incredible. I love what they've done.
You can say what you're politely not saying because of bad writing of a previous show. It's okay.
Chat, feel free to put your rating as well. I'll add it to the list. Shai.
Well, I am not scared of integers. Hold number. So, it's interesting because I came in thinking 9 out of 10, and then after having watched it and discussing it, I was like, oh, you know what, this is a 10 out of 10. But then Stars had to remind me that Alvarado's monologue is underwritten. And
it's not underwritten.
The underwriting of his monologue is what triggers my thought that Christine Chapel doesn't have enough sort of trauma and loss in this episode.
I feel like we could have done with two more scenes. We could have done with a scene of Pike talking to Ortegas after the dinner and giving her a bit of a dressing down, maybe getting more context on why she flipped out, and another scene maybe where the Klingons break through the wire and Chapel has to take the Protocol 12, and maybe it only lasts for like 2 minutes or whatever, and all you just see is her inject it, and that speaks for it. I feel like those two would have been enough.
I really just need more connection between her and Alvarado. Like, Alvarado's not developed enough character for me. Like, there was no Matt Damon Saving Private Ryan, here's who I am in my normal life. No Tom Hanks, I'm a teacher back at home. Here's what I wanted to be doing in my life, and this is what I ended up doing. So I'll stick to 9 out of 10, even though in terms of cinematography, in terms of like references to Coppola's Apocalypse Now and Kurosawa's Rashomon, nods to Altman's MASH. It really is spectacular. But I'll stick to 9 out of 10. Just the same as the trial episode, because it didn't give me the A Few Good Men shouting at Colonel Jaffe moment.
You can't handle the truth. All right, speaking of people that can't handle the truth, Frank.
I will be using integers, unwhole numbers, no exponents, but some slight algebraic equations to rate this, because Clint Howard deserves no less. Nothing in this world is perfect, so nothing gets a 10. The highest rating I would give anything would be like a 9.7. And this entire season's been building and building and building to a crescendo. I truly believe this is the crescendo. I don't need to watch next week because I don't think anything will outdo this. So I'm just gonna say that this is the end for me, except for like in 2 weeks, and then I'll see if they maybe start over. For just little itty bitty invisible nitpicks, like, again, I think you said it very well, Stars. If I had somebody that had never watched Star Trek and said, show me 3 episodes of what Star Trek is, I give you 3 hours of my life, sell me on Star Trek in 3 hours, this would be one of the 3 episodes I would show.
Yep.
Because it's not Star Trek, and at the same time it absolutely is Star Trek.
Yeah.
It's the goriest episode of Star Trek ever. It's the realest episode of Star Trek ever for us in people in the 21st century dealing with a post-war society. And the acting is just out of this world with the principal key players. So I'm gonna stick it with a solid 5, and I think that they should learn from that. No, I'm gonna give it a 9.4.
Okay.
And it's. I hope the season finale will beat it, because I have utmost high expectations, but I won't be mad if the season finale sucks, because this has been a treat. And I know we're going to have to wait 2 years to get the next season, but if we get even 1 episode like this in the 3rd season, I'll wait.
Yeah. Okay, Dan.
This is a best of both worlds. This is that good. This is that good. This is that good. It is.
It almost feels sacrilegious, but I think you're right.
It is. And I remember watching that. I remember waiting between those two. I remember waiting between that season.
Us on this side of the Pacific, who didn't get it on the television. No, on the Atlantic even. Didn't get it on
Poor
the television
bastards.
until several years later.
Yeah, I remember waiting. So, I'll give it a 9.975, because if I give it a 10, if I give it a 10, everyone turns it to salamanders and it sucks. It wouldn't work with salamanders. So no, this is the best of both worlds for me. This is one of the best. This is in my top 10 automatically. It's just the acting, the casting, the lighting, even the pancake as Mokmara. It's just No you. But it's just it shows, like, it takes a character that was in 2 episodes of the original series, underserved, left in the background. It recasts him with someone who is absolutely amazing. I mean, this guy should be winning Oscars. He should be winning Tonys. He should be, he should be anywhere you put him. He should win, including, and it's just in my top 10 already. It's so good. And like I said, you turn the sound off, it still carries. So it's a 10.
I'm going to go for a solid 9. I feel like, the bits I didn't like was a little bit like like I said before, like its placement in the overall scheme of things, and like I feel it did a lot of a little bit of sort of like a little bit of like I can see the eyeball there, but other than that, like, this is stunning episode. This is what Trek is for. This is for being a parallel to our reality and just pointing out, telling these stories and giving us these ethical dilemmas, which Trek is so good at. Like, this is a true, I don't want to say not quite trolley problem, but that kind of thing, who is the greater good here? Is it M'Benga or the lives he saved, it is a solid 9. It's like you say, I would show if my wife ever came down and said, "Oh, I would like to watch some Star Trek with you," and show me some episodes I might like. It would be this one and Frame of Mind. Like, it's like episodes that are kind of separated from what people think Star Trek is, but are very central in like common themes for good storytelling. So yeah, definitely top 1. And with that, we have collectively rated this a 9.4.
That's pretty high.
That's pretty good. It's definitely up there with our top rated episodes of this season. But we'll go for a run. I think we'll have a full rundown of the episodes once we get to our season review. I'd like to personally thank everyone for coming along. Thank you, Dan, for joining this week. We'll have you on.
Yes, thank you. We need to have you more often.
Definitely. Frank and Shai, thank you for coming back. And Stars, thank you for turning up. Join us again on August the 13th. Obviously, we're a little week behind. This is going to be after the finale, where we will be talking about Subspace Rhapsody. And we will be musical. I have been transcribing all the music. I will be bringing my keyboard. We will be having a sing-along. And we will be talking about the episode as well. And I feel like there's going to be some definite opinions about it. But if you want to find out more, please come and join our Discord and all that. The links are in the descriptions down below.
Good to go.
We will
Some people just hate joy.
I welcome that conversation.
Don't worry, Shai. We'll make it a private conversation.
Yeah.
Private
Ban everyone disagrees with us now.
About our frustration.
Actually, I love that one. I do love that.
Yeah, that was great. That's all I'm going to say. See, there you go. I can get you to admit there's one in there. If I can drag it out of you.
Yeah. I'll let Dan go and play some Sea of Thieves now as well. We'll see you later, guys. Live long and prosper, and
bye.
Bye.